folks. We whose opinions in any way coming up at the top of the hour. If I remember correctly, for the rest of you, I don't know what we're doing on HolidayRadio.net either, but neither do we. So we'll figure that out when we get there. We'll burn that bridge when we cross it. The Armchair Athletes back after the news.
It's 5 o'clock.
Good evening, good evening. It is now 5. Good evening, I think I got it this time. It is now 5 p.m. and time for Whose Opinion Is It Anyway? With your host, Candace.
And Victor.
Hey, Vic, how is it going this week? How was your week?
Fairly well. It's going well. I'm winding down now, and my semester has come to a close, and I'm finally able to breathe and exhale. So I'm doing quite well at this point.
You excited about the semester coming to a close?
Absolutely. It's a time for reflection. It's a time to sit back and think on what has transpired over the past year so I can power up and then charge into the new year.
Mm-hmm. Great. So any big holiday plans? Merry Christmas to everyone, by the way, because we won't speak to them again until then.
Happy Kwanzaa.
Any big holiday plans for you?
Not really. I mean, I was thinking about traveling, and I still might do some travel, but I think I'm leaning towards doing a staycation.
A staycation?
A staycation.
That's a staycation.
Just gonna kind of chill here, chill with the family, visit family and friends, and do stuff like that in this particular region.
Okay. Well, I don't have any big holiday plans. Well, to me, they're big plans.
Yes.
I enjoy going over to my aunt's house, going to eat with some family.
Absolutely.
Just enjoy some wonderful family
Absolutely.
time. But before we get into that, we have a pretty good topic tonight that kind of hits on family, if you will.
Absolutely.
We want to get into a little bit of a discussion on economic independence.
Yes. Yes.
You go ahead and kick us off this week, Vic.
I want to begin by just giving our listenership and viewership something to ponder over, and this following statement was accredited to Chancellor Williams, who wrote the noted book, the groundbreaking book, The Destruction of Black Civilization. Mm-hmm. In addition to that book, he wrote another couple of books, but there was a book that is of sorts a follow-up to The Destruction of Black Civilization, and it is The Rebirth of African Civilization. Mm-hmm. But in the first book, which is entitled The Destruction of Black Civilization, Chancellor Williams did a comparative and a contrasting study concerning black people and Jewish people.
Okay.
And he said a couple quick things. He said that, number one, both groups are hated groups. Both people of African descent and Jewish persons are hated groups. Would you agree with me?
I would agree that a fair share, not fair share, but an unfair share of discrimination and whatnot happens in the direction of African Americans as well as Jewish people.
Absolutely.
Well, black people, period. I don't even just say African Americans,
sure.
Black people.
Absolutely. Black people. And he said that, now, he said that both groups, as you just stated, face and experience their fair share of attacks and discriminatory practices. However, he said that at one point in the history of Jewish people, they had determined that they were going to empower themselves intellectually and economically. Let me repeat that one more time. They had determined at a particular point in their history that they would become powerful intellectually and economically. And he said that of course Judaism is their religion, and of course, see, some people have the mistake that Jewish people are monolithic. You have Jewish persons of African descent, you have Asian Jews, you have European Jews, Arab Jews, so they are a diverse religious group, okay, number one. However, they had determined that they would become very powerful intellectually and economically. In other words, they put themselves in a position whereby you might not like them, but you're going to have to deal with them.
Right.
So beyond their religion of Judaism, really education became their second religion. Let's think about that statement now. They had determined that they would become the leading scholars wherever they were. And although Judaism was the religion that they practiced, education became their second religion.
And I think that was actually quite a brilliant plan, because we've said time and time again on here about how you cannot control a person's heart.
Yes.
Or you cannot make them view you a certain way, which is why we have laws to kind of help keep people's character in line.
Yes.
And so with them deciding that education and economic empowerment would be their top things, in a way, it makes people have to deal with you in a way that they would not normally deal with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so now we have a two-pronged approach here. That's intellectual development and economic empowerment. Therefore, they put themselves in position of empowerment from an economic perspective. In as far as black people are concerned, I think that we need to do the same thing. We're not a monolithic community. We have a diversity of religious practices, philosophical viewpoints, political associations, etc. But I think that when we look at the social, the political, the economic construct affecting and impacting black people, I think one of the ways in which we can empower ourselves is to empower ourselves intellectually. In other words, to master whatever field of study that we find ourselves going into. Therefore, we would become the stewards of that particular field, no matter what the academic discipline is, right? We're putting ourselves in position to have to be dealt with, number one. Secondly, we need to also follow suit regarding this idea of empowering ourselves economically. Wow. And we always hear the statistic that people have been making for, I don't know, the last few years, several years. They say that, what is the gross national product with regard to black people in America? Is it $14 billion or is it 14 trillion? There's some.
I don't know that we've reached trillion yet. I think we're still in the billion.
But there's some statement, there's some astronomical figure that we hear people making in our community as it relates to how much economics we generate throughout the course of a year.
A $1 billion industry.
And we're the 14th richest nation on the planet. Let's think about that for a second. With regard to all the money that passes through our hands, we are the 14th richest nation on the planet. But if we are the 14th richest nation on the planet collectively, why then are we so poor individually? Why is that? Why is that? You know, we're going to raise some questions centered around this point that we're raising here. But I think what also comes to mind is another debate that raged between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. And of course, W.E.B. Du Bois was the leading scholar, one of the leading scholars of our community and of this nation and so forth. And he certainly was a part of the protest movement. He had determined that we need to challenge the powers that be on their ground, wherever they are, right? However, Booker T. Washington appeared to be the more conservative person of the two, and he put the emphasis on economic empowerment. Now, what some people maintain is that because we followed Du Bois's strategy, right, as he began to grow and become more of a figure to be dealt with moving into the 20th century and beyond, the majority of our leadership is Du Boisian. Some people would suggest that we put Booker T. Washington on the back burner. And because we put his emphasis on the back burner, it's one of the reasons as to why we're in our current plight economically.
Right.
What do you think about that?
I do think that's good. I want to point out, though, that there is a huge difference between income and wealth. Okay. And as it refers to income as refers to both income and wealth, we are dealing with a disparity there. Okay. There's an inequality there. So it's important to make some distinctions that between income and wealth. First of all, income is how much money you earn in a given year, and wealth is known as your net worth. It's the cumulative value of all of your assets minus your debts. So what qualifies as an asset would be like cash in the bank, investments, real estate, jewelry, art, collectibles, anything of tangible value. And of course, debts would be outstanding mortgage debt, student loan debt, and credit card balances. And it's important to make a distinction between income and wealth because income inequality and wealth inequality, they're not equal.
Yes.
According to some research originally done by some economists, stumbling over my words tonight, slow it down, talk a little slower,
all right.
that the top 1% of income earners took home 17.67% of the total income, and less than a fifth of everyone in the U.S., and this is from like 2008 study. To qualify as the top 1% of earner, you needed to make little more than $500,000 in income in 2011. So wealth inequality is far greater, according to an analysis of Federal Reserve data by the Economic Policy Institute. So the wealthiest 1% of Americans control about 35.6% of the total wealth of the country, which is more than a third.
Wow.
Even more incredible is that the richest 10% of Americans control 35.6% of the total wealth of the country. And even more incredible is that the richest 10% of Americans control 75% of the wealth.
Wow.
Leaving only 25% to the other 90% of Americans. And so one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, why is wealth disparity so pronounced?
That's an excellent question. That's a great question. And I wish I had the answer.
How about I have an answer?
Okay, go ahead.
It's because it's easier to get rich when you already have a lot of money.
Yes.
Wealthier people, they can save and invest more of their money, while people of, I guess, more, we'll say, humbler financial means.
Yes.
While they spend most of their paycheck on basic stuff, such as food, the mortgage, credit card bills, utilities, childcare, and other costs of daily lives, which in turn leaves them with little to invest in things such as stock or to feed their 401k.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Let me see if I can link that point with another point here, because you know me, I'm always bringing books here. I have a number of different books here, and one book that I have is entitled Powernomics: The National Plan to Empower Black America by Dr. Claude Anderson, who had ties to Michigan. At one time, I believe he taught at Wayne State University, and he also worked as a consultant in the city of Detroit a number of years ago. And interestingly enough, Candace, several years ago, when Dr. Claude Anderson had met with a number of different prominent people, community activists and such in the city of Detroit, he was proposing Africa Town. Do you remember that?
Yes.
He proposed Africa Town, and what happened was that he was met with opposition. He had some persons in the black community who were very supportive of the idea, because you have Greek Town.
Right.
You have
Chinatown.
in Detroit, you have Pole Town.
Yeah, China. Yep.
You Chinatown, we have Mexican Town, all in the city of Detroit, in the Detroit metropolitan area, and Dearborn as well. It has the largest Middle Eastern population outside of the Middle East.
Yes.
So in the city of Detroit, which has approximately, I'll say anywhere between 80 to 85%, it's 80 to 85% black, the city of Detroit. You would think that proposing such an idea with regard to Africa Town would be popular, it would be accepted, would be embraced by people. Why did he receive such pushback, not only for people outside of our community, but from certain black people?
Assimilation is something else. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
I think that once we decided, we no longer wanted, the whole separate but equal. We didn't want to be segregated. That we wanted to all be one.
Oh my goodness!
I think that because we were an enslaved race here in this country, because we wanted to just fit in and be like everybody else.
Yes.
I think that wanting your own separate town is kind of like moving back to that whole separation thing. And I don't think that. It's the same thing with once the Emancipation Proclamation happened, and I should say Juneteenth. Once black people actually realized that they were free. for some reason we fail to make demands.
Yes.
Or because we're so busy not wanting to be viewed as black because we've been told for so long that that's a bad thing.
Yes,
Or
yes,
we don't want the
yes.
stigmas. Or again, we want to assimilate and fit in and just
Yes.
be one so badly because
Mhm.
we were treated so poorly and we were separated and not given rights that it's just like, just be quiet and go with it.
Yes,
We're finally in,
yes.
just go with it.
My
Not
goodness.
realizing that, we're in on crumbs. If
Yes.
we can even call what we have crumbs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that so much of the pushback was because you want to
Mhm.
believe so bad that you're American.
Okay.
That you don't want the qualifier on it as an African American
Okay.
or whatever other version
Yes,
of American.
yes, yes.
You want it to just be American. And so
Uh-huh.
because of that, you tend to fight against your own best interests in the name of assimilation and fitting in and being like
Mhm.
one.
Well, that's a great point, and I would agree with you with regard to that. But my understanding of American history is that America as a nation has really organized herself around the idea of ethnic organization, politically, socially, economically, and otherwise. Whether you're talking about Jewish persons from Europe moving or migrating to America,
Mm-hmm.
German persons coming here, persons coming from Russia, the Ukraine, from Greece,
Mm-hmm.
from Italy, from China, Japan, from Ghana, Nigeria, whatever the case may be. Those various groups of persons were organizing themselves from an ethnic perspective, and that's the same idea that you saw Dr. Claude Anderson responding to in the city of Detroit.
But you have to talk about two different ways in which you were
Mhm.
introduced to this country.
Okay.
So it's one thing to say I migrated,
Yes.
and there's another thing to say that I was bought. No, I'm being serious.
No, I know you are. I know you are. I know you are.
And
I
so
know you are.
for them to come over, there's a different slate. It's I'm coming over here as me because I'm
Yes.
being told that I'm accepted as me in
Uh-huh.
a melting pot.
Yes.
Whereas the rest of us, I was bought here,
Okay.
told that I was going to labor, and I was the lowest common denominator here.
Okay.
Excuse me, the lowest denominator
Yes,
here.
yes, yes.
So with everyone else, they have the opportunity to decide to come, to decide to build,
Mhm.
to come from where they were being rejected for who they were and told they were going to be accepted for who they
Mhm.
were. Whereas we were bought here
Okay.
in a form of rejection of who we are, being
Mhm.
told you're the lowest. So there's a whole mentality that has to be overcome in order to understand to want certain things for yourself is not
Mhm.
a bad thing.
Okay. Absolutely.
And that if America is really a melting pot,
Mhm.
then we have to look at how much we try to force people to assimilate to the culture that's been built here.
Now, I agree.
Mhm.
I agree with the general thrust of your statement. It's a great point that you've made. Certainly, those other groups have been more accepted
Gotta say hi to the Facebook people.
than us.
Hi.
Hello, everybody.
Paul said hello from.
Hello, Paul.
No, forget Paul because Paul is somewhere enjoying some sun.
He's so.
He said hello from California, so forget Paul. No, I'm kidding. Hi, Paul. Hi, Jasmine. Hi, Patrick. Hi,
Absolutely.
Jacqueline.
And the
Hi,
family.
Nicole.
Yes.
Hi, Sequoia. Just hi, everybody that's with us live on Facebook. Feel free to join in the conversation at any point in time.
Yes, yes. Now back to my point here. Yeah, I certainly agree with you. They were certainly, those other groups, every other group,
Mm-hmm.
save the Native American who was just wiped out. Genocide was enacted against the Native American here in this country. However, every other group was more accepted than black people.
Well, yeah, that was the whole premise to get more people into America was come on, give us your poor, your tired,
Oh my
you know the
goodness.
line.
You know what though? I don't hear anybody say that anymore.
Well, not anymore, because now they swear up and down that the poor and tired are taking jobs that they didn't even want to do to begin with. So now it's like, nah,
Yeah.
this pot is full. We don't need to melt anybody else into
Or was it
it.
always meant for certain people of a certain extraction? I mean, is that what it? Now I got to say this though. Okay, of course, if you're Irish, your people suffered via the Irish potato famine and whatnot, and then Irish persons migrated here. Certainly, going back to Ireland, they've been in the middle of a fight with the British for centuries, right? And then for persons of European descent who were Jewish, they were driven off the continent of Europe, especially with regard to the rise of fascism leading into World War II. And we even have seen a resurgence of that. And I must say this, though, Candace, certainly I would say the leading ethnic group in this country, the group that were the supposed blue bloods who came over here on the Mayflower and left England were Anglo-Saxons, right? And you would have people argue, you would have people, certainly your nativists, you would have people argue that the Anglo-Saxons are the cultural standard bearer in American society. So much so that even attack people from Italy and from Greece, persons from Albania, persons from Southern Europe were less accepted than persons from Northern Europe. Go ahead.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with that. That's why you laugh when you said. That's why I laugh when you said Anglo-Saxon. Yeah, you are right on point with this. Right on point. But I think again the difference is, especially when we began to talk about economic independence.
Yes.
Is that you've had everyone else. They were able to come over here.
Yes.
And they were able to. Pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Whereas you have people who were brought over here under different circumstances, who were, in some cases, the bootstrap pullers, if you will. Come on now.
Absolutely. No doubt about that. No doubt about that.
And so you have people that can come over here now and they can get loans and they can pass businesses down and, they'll get these 7-year deals. And then my family, then my cousin can take it there after you work. And they'll get all of these different privileges that you have people who have been in this country their entire lives are being redlined from those same privileges.
Absolutely.
We are at different starting points. And regardless of the fact that we were here, we didn't migrate here, or they came after their first generation, whatever. At this point in time, some of us who are generation whatever, we still do not have access to those same rights and privileges as those people who are choosing to come. There's a different starting point.
That's true. I agree with you wholeheartedly. No question about that. And
not only that, but then there's a whole mentality that has to be watched out. Again, you have people that are welcomed, and like you said, the country is not so welcoming at this point. But you have people who were welcomed, and then you have people who were just like, look, you don't want to work for us anymore? Okay. You won't get anything at all. Even though we already weren't giving you anything. You can at least act like you were happy with that little shack in the back of the plantation, living with your family that I could take and sell at any point in time I felt like it. And so you don't want that anymore. We're going to show you. Okay. But we have to be honest that the starting point was different. The standard is different. The mentality is different. And again, we do have to own a little bit of the no, be quiet, that we do. Because come on now, how many times have you been told, don't act that way in front of white people, or don't do this, or don't do that, or I think there has to be an overhaul. Politics. There has to be a mental overhaul, period. In order to even get to a point where we understand the importance of economic independence and the power in it. Because other than that, we will continue to be $1 billion industry for everyone but ourselves. Because they have plenty of studies that talk about how quickly a dollar is, how long it takes a dollar to recycle through one community, but how quickly it takes to leave our community.
Absolutely. And you know what this conversation is reminding me of, Candace, especially as we do a comparative analysis concerning our history and what has happened to us versus other groups. There's a theory referred to as NATO alienation. NATO alienation. And the person who is credited with having developed that idea is a brother by the name of Orlando Patterson. He's a theorist, a cultural theorist. And NATO alienation makes reference to the idea that you have a particular group of people who have been ripped from the breast of their mother. In our case, we have been ripped from the breast of Mother Africa, uprooted from the continent of Africa, brought here, and we were taken through a process that I would like to call de-Africanization. We have gone through the process of de-Africanization. Let's let that marinate for a second. Because what happens once a group goes through that process of de-Africanization?
Again, we're coming from a standpoint of culturally we were ripped from where we were. And we were bought into and being told that our culture was bad. We were ripped from our language. We were ripped from our educational systems. We were ripped from our religions. We were ripped from our spirituality, if you will. And so now, which proves your point of what you were saying. So now it's a matter of constantly trying to fit back into what we're told is what we're supposed to be like, or try to fit into a culture or a language or something that is not necessarily home to us. If I can use the word home, meaning it's not the natural thing for us. And so to have that constant struggle.
Yes. That process objectifies a people. It turns a people into an object of scorn and an object of ridicule, because the very process in and of itself devalues, defames, and demeans the person and the people in question, right? So it's very symbolic, and it really points to a death-like state, the process of NATO alienation. However, to your other point, I do agree with you, Candace. I believe that a cultural lobotomy has been practiced upon black people. A cultural lobotomy. Let's unpack this for a second, because once a people go through the process of de-Africanization, whereby a cultural lobotomy has been practiced on that people, then what do you have? What is our frame of reference? What does our frame of reference become, particularly if the person in question is void of the knowledge of self? What happens then? What happens then? I am who I say you are. Well, who am I?
That's good. That was a good one.
But look at this, Candace. We live in the age of information. This is the ultimate irony. We live in the year 2017. It's soon about to become 2018. We live in the age of information. There's so much information out here. I remember Malcolm X saying back in the early 1960s, then, over 50 years ago, that there was so much information floating around the society and libraries and universities, etc., that a person can only be void of this information if they choose to be. Fast forward to 2017, right? We are living in the age of information. We have the internet. We have all these different things, social media. There's information everywhere.
But you also have to look at the fact that, again, we have to go back to the point of assimilation.
Okay.
And so sometimes it's, I don't want this information because I want to fit in where I am.
Oh, my goodness. So
that's not going to do me any good because it's long gone. That's the thought process behind it. It's not true. But that's not going to do me any good now because this is where I am here. This is where I am now. But that is the danger of not knowing history, of not knowing self.
But you're suggesting that in some cases, if I'm hearing you correctly, that there are some people who make the conscious, determined, how could I cap that? They make a conscious effort to not know their history and to embrace somebody else's story or narrative.
Because sometimes it's just easier because it is painful to realize what you've lost.
Oh,
it's
my
painful.
goodness. Oh, my goodness.
Come on now.
Wait a minute. Now,
it's painful to realize what you've lost.
Remember that scene in the movie The Matrix? Remember? Walk with me now. Walk with me for a second. There was a scene, I forget whether it was the first, I think it might have been the first Matrix. But anyway, that there was a character in the movie he was about to turn. He was feigning as if he was with what's the name of the character that Lawrence Fishburne played? Morpheus. He was feigning allegiance to Morpheus and Neo and company, right? And at a critical point in the movie, he turned on Morpheus. And he was in the process of having a conversation with the agent from the system. Remember that? And he sat down, and mind you, everything that they were experiencing, the landscape, the backdrop, everything, even the food that they were eating was fake. Right. It was fake, right? This guy cut into the steak and said, you know what? Even though this steak is not real, even though this steak is an illusion, I love the taste of this steak. And I'm going to enjoy this steak. I'm going to refute what Morpheus is trying to convey to us.
Ignorance is bliss. Sometimes it's just better. It's like even when you know it's not real, I'd rather have the illusion of bliss
than the
harsh, bitter reality of what it is.
Wow. So really, this is interesting. So that puts a different. I was about to make reference to consciousness, because consciousness is awareness, but that puts a different spin on this idea of consciousness, because it appears what we're saying here is that you have some people who are consciously aware of what they're doing, and even though it's buying into a false reality, they feel welcome to it, and they're rejecting their story, their narrative, their history, their culture.
Again, I gotta keep using the word illusion here.
All right.
Because if I can give you the illusion that the life that I have stolen you from was worse than the life you have now,
Yes.
then I can keep you captive in your mind.
Wow.
I can get you to believe that my way works best for you, even though my way is not natural for you.
But doesn't charity begin at home? Since we're talking about economic empowerment, economic development, and so
But what
forth,
happens?
doesn't it begin at home, though? I'm just saying, doesn't it? Because look, true enough, when we look at our history and we look at the individual success stories that have occurred down through the annals of time since we've been here in America, we have some of I'm talking about black people now. We have some of the greatest individual success stories that have ever existed in American society. Period. Bar none. I don't care who you're talking about. I don't care whether you're talking about Jewish people. I don't care if you're talking about Anglo-Saxons. I don't care if you're talking about Polish persons, Arab persons, or whoever. We have some of the greatest individual success stories ever in the annals of American history. Period. Bar none. In spite of the odds. In spite of all the obstacles, in spite of systemic racism and hatred, in spite of all these things, we've had sisters and brothers who fought hell with a toothpick and kept on pushing. I mean, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. So what? Where is that spirit? Where is that fighting spirit today in 2017? Where is it?
I'm not going to say that it's missing, because I feel like we still have people that will, what'd you say, fight hell with a toothpick?
With a toothpick.
I feel like we still have some people that will do that.
Come on in, Harriet Tubman.
So I'm not going to say that it's not missing.
Okay.
But again, we cannot sit up and act like we don't understand. How about this also?
Okay.
We tend to, and I think Farrakhan had a very good point of how he said that black people kill their leaders. I agree with that.
Goodness.
I agree
Oh my
with his
goodness.
point on that.
Yes. We wear them out. We wear our leadership out.
Or how there is a harsher standard that we will hold our leaders to as opposed to other people. I think that whole crabs in a barrel, it defines it so perfectly. And it's just, it's every time, it's literally, if we were to describe black people as a body, we keep tripping over our own feet.
Oh my goodness.
Every single time.
So we're not working within the construct of unity. We're not embracing the principle of unity, because the body in part functions under the principle of unity.
Right. And I think that we still have not learned to grasp the concept of, if we move in a way that if we believe if I prosper, everybody prospers, as opposed to it becomes, oh, I'm here, stiff arm, you can't come with me.
Oh my goodness. Wait a minute, stiff arm?
Stiff arm. You can't come with me. I think that we need to learn to move in a way that we recognize Black Wall Street is a perfect example of recognizing unity.
Absolutely. No doubt about that.
And what you can do and what you can accomplish, and how economically you can stand on your own, how you can have your own doctors, you can have your own banks.
Absolutely.
You can have your own system.
Yes. Absolutely.
And still be fine. Actually, and prosper.
And prosper. Absolutely. So you're talking about then, Candace, and I don't hear many voices alluding to this. You're talking about, in part, the significance of community.
Yes.
Wow. So go ahead. You had another point that you're about to make.
Because I was just going to say that, which brings me to my point now of when you had cases such as Black Wall Street, where you had the dollars recycling, and we were in a better economic standpoint, at least in that area. Yeah. Whereas now you have things that do not belong to us, right in our very own neighborhoods.
Okay. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Things that do not benefit us.
Right now. Merchants who move into the the black community.
Yes. And someone made a point, but someone made a really good point of how we're so welcoming. And I think
Yes.
that's one of the things that I do love
Mm-hmm.
about us is that
Mhm.
we are loving and welcoming and forgiving. And we're not
Mhm.
necessarily discriminatory to a certain point. Because
Mhm.
everybody discriminates.
Yes. Uh-huh.
But in this sense, I'm going to say oh, you're Chinese, you can't live next to me. Or, oh, you're the,
Absolutely.
it's more of a, oh, cool. We don't mind if everybody else gets money. We just forget to care that we're not getting money.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So isn't the first principle of financial stewardship is to pay oneself first?
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that not only should we do that individually, but we should do that collectively.
Absolutely. We say all the time, buy black, do this, do that. But then when we have a gripe with a black business, the first thing we want to say is they're unprofessional, they're
Oh my
this or
goodness.
this wasn't done. But it's like we encounter non-black owned businesses all the time
All the
where
time.
someone is unprofessional.
Yes,
Where the
yeah,
food
yeah.
wasn't to your liking.
No doubt.
Where, where you had to wait a
Absolutely.
long time. But it's like, yeah, we might trash them a little bit, but we'll still go back.
Absolutely.
Whereas
True.
that black
True.
business, it's like, you know what, go ahead. We're going to raise our
I'm
hand.
I'm
up.
done with you.
Right, we're going to let you falter. We're gonna
You
let
exist no
you,
more.
Exactly.
You've been excommunicated from the black community.
Exactly. And it's almost kind of like, how we tell, I would never tell my
Yes.
kid they had to be twice as good as
Absolutely.
him. But you know how you've been told your entire life you have to be twice
Yes.
as good.
Oh,
You have to
absolutely.
do that. It's like we hold ourselves to such a standard. It's
Mhm.
crazy
Mm-hmm.
that even when there's just a little bit of something off, we
Yes.
will totally dismiss another black person, but we'll
Yeah,
keep
absolutely.
continuing to go to other establishments.
Absolutely. No
when
doubt
it's
about
like,
that.
okay, if you're saying that this establishment has to be like this in order to have you frequent it, why isn't that the same thing for any other establishment?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like right now, I have a hair store that I will not go in ever again.
don't
They will
blame you.
never get another penny from me. I'm not going to say the name of the
Okay.
store. But because I went in there, the worker was very unprofessional, and it just was
Mhm.
ridiculous. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, see if you get another dime from me.
Absolutely.
And it's not black owned, obviously.
Absolutely.
But I'm just saying that take that same standard that you have for black businesses and apply that to everywhere else.
Oh, absolutely.
Or that same willingness that you have to pay to have so and so's name on your clothes. Why can't you had that same pride in? Because I remember when Sean John and all that stuff, and Fubu and everything else was big.
No doubt. No doubt. For us, by us, huh?
Right, and we do have a comment saying
Okay.
that understanding and living in a black economic community and the ability to lead and guide that community will be its success.
Mm.
It will take a pioneer in that field.
I agree. And I think we can do it. We have the intellectual capacity, we have the ability, we have the tenacity and the creativity to do it. I agree.
Listen, ability
It's not even to be questioned.
ability is never been
Mhm.
something that we have to question.
Mm-hmm.
Intelligence has never been something
Never.
we have to
Never.
question. The willingness to work together
Ah.
has always been the problem. It's not, are we
Mhm.
smart enough? Are we fast enough?
Sure.
Are we capable?
Sure.
That's not the question.
Sure.
Are we willing? Is the question.
Well, you know what Marcus Garvey said? He said, "Up, you mighty race. You can do what you will yourself to do." Marcus Mosiah Garvey, probably he was the real prince of Pan-Africanism. Before Brother Umar came along, I got love for Brother Umar, but Marcus Garvey was the prince of Pan-Africanism, and that was his point. Up, you mighty people. You can do what you will yourself to do.
Right.
And I agree. I'm in total agreement with that. No question about that.
But I think I want to go back to as we discuss economic independence and what it looks like to kind of gain some stock here. One of the things that we often discuss
Mhm.
is when it comes in terms of voting. We'll tell each other, get out, go vote, go
Yeah.
vote, go vote. And then again, we saw in Alabama what happens when we vote, when we show up in
Yes,
numbers.
absolutely.
But then after that, there is no requirement from
Yes.
there for us. There's
Mhm.
no agenda set at the table. There's no us telling them this is what we
Mhm.
now need economically. This is what we
Yes.
need, socially. There are
Mhm.
no more requirements from that. So I think one of the things that we need to look at is building a system of requirement. Not, if we're going to show up for people, then we have to demand that they show up for us as
Yes,
well.
yes. There's a quid pro quo here.
Yes.
One hand washes the other.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt about that. You know what? Okay, to further that point, since we're making reference to the significance of community, right, the importance of community, I think that we need to create the environment that would be conducive to economic empowerment with respect to black people. So then how can we do that? Because Some people would argue that in terms of the tangible black, the physical black community, that we no longer, you've heard this, I'm sure, we no longer live in communities, we live in neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference between a neighborhood
There's a huge difference
and a
between
community.
a neighborhood and a community. I grew up in a community. I now live in a neighborhood.
Oh my goodness! So what?
I think
what are some
what
of
we
the
say in
characteristics?
terms of community, it was everybody was family. Everybody
Okay.
watched everyone.
Okay.
It wasn't just let me look out for my house on my block.
Yes.
Everybody was like, let's look out for each other's house.
Yes.
Let's look out for each other's children.
Absolutely.
Let's look out. It was a collective
Yes.
sort of thing.
Mhm.
Whereas now, I can go in my house and some people couldn't even tell you who their neighbors are.
True. I
Couldn't
agree
even
with
tell
you.
you. You'd be in the store thinking, where do I know them from?
Mhm.
Oh, I live across the street. Whereas, you know.
Been there for 5 years.
Right. I accidentally got their mail one day.
There you go. Absolutely.
Right. Whereas, you know, previous times we had
Yeah.
people that everybody, you just knew one another.
Absolutely.
You looked out for one another.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a huge difference now.
Mhm.
Of we want to come and just stay in our little shells. And
Yes.
it's
So
really
unfortunate.
hard for me to feel for you or care for you when I know nothing about you.
Wow. See, I'm starting to hear a theme throughout this conversation, and it appears that there has been a disconnect that has occurred with regard to the black community with respect to the creation and the maintenance of community, right? Because I think we caught the tail end of that era whereby the black community was a community. Aside from the physical characteristics of having a school, follow me now, the schools are being closed all throughout urban America, right? But back in the day, every neighborhood had an anchor school.
Right.
And in some cases, they had more than one anchor school. They had an anchor grade school, an anchor, back in my day, they called it a junior high school, right? And a high school. Then we had businesses in the community. We had some churches in the community. You had the doctor, the lawyer, the plumber, the teacher, the security guard, the preacher, all living in the same neighborhood. So there was a sense of connection, a sense of connectivity that it had existed among black people, no matter what kind of job or station in life you held at that time. You know what I'm saying? And I gotta say this. Back then and even today, I would say probably one of the few places in the black community where you have all roads intersecting socially and economically and otherwise is the black church. Is the church. Where you have people who are coming from different walks of life, different jobs, different careers, etc., different views on life. They intersect at the church. I'm just saying. He didn't keep on moving.
Right. So I guess if we're looking at in terms of economic independence and some of the first steps that need to be taken to get
Yes,
there.
that's foundational. I think it's foundational.
So I think that foundationally we'll say that the community is needed.
Yes, absolutely. A sense of connectivity. So now, see, we don't live we don't live void of a context. We live within a context. We don't live in a vacuum, right? We live within, and we always say this, a social, political, economic context. So what is occurring in Black America now? Black cities in America are faced with gentrification. So that's one reality we got to deal with is gentrification. And you know this well by having worked in the political sphere. You still are involved in that. We see now the emergence of regional governance.
Oh, yes.
Which I think, now I want to hear you, because you're the one that worked in that field. We're having some very powerful entities that are promoting this idea of regional governance. And what I see, Candace, I want to get your view on this. What I see is that there's certain people who want to disempower the black community politically from that standpoint. Right? What do you think?
I think, and this is why it's always so dangerous to just allow something to happen to a certain sect of people.
Yes.
For the simple fact that it's going to come back around.
Absolutely.
So as you start to look at, and I'm going to speak of privatization because that is becoming
Absolutely.
a huge part of your government, whether you want to acknowledge it or not.
Absolutely.
you have to be careful with those kind of things, because when you look at it and you think, oh, just the black neighborhoods are being gentrified, I think it's so easy to get caught in that you forget that you're fighting a class war.
Ah, yes, no
The
doubt.
reality is, it is the haves and the have-nots.
Yes.
And so while you're coming in and you're gentrifying so many things, you got to be careful, because in a minute you're going to gentrify the struggle. So you're going to have that with us.
Okay, absolutely.
And so I think it's just one of those things where you have to be mindful of the fact that you cannot think that something is going to happen to a segment of the population and not hit you too.
Absolutely. No
Especially
doubt
when you
about
talk
that.
about regionalizing government and stuff, because you have people who, although they're not black, they might as well be, because they don't have the money either.
Absolutely. No question about it.
And so
No question about it.
you may not be black in skin tone, but you're black economically, and you're about to be treated like a black person economically.
Yes, absolutely, no doubt about that. That's a significant statement, and I think that it behooves we in the black community and beyond, in other communities as well, to be aware of that.
Right. I just saw a joke the other day, actually, where they were saying that it was a rich white man sitting at a table, a working class white man, and a black man sitting at a table. There were 12 cookies on the table, and the rich white man took 11 of them. No, there were 13 cookies on the table. The rich white man took 12 of them, and he looked at the poor white man and was like, "You better hurry up for that black man steal your cookies."
I like that. I like that.
You might want to pay attention.
I like that.
Why you trying to fight me over this one cookie?
doubt.
He took the other 12.
That's the reality that we're dealing with in 21st century America.
Oh yeah, it's a very interesting time. And as we began to talk about economic independence and kind of go back to that, I think that one of the things we've kind of covered was the fact that there needs to be a thought process overhaul.
Absolutely. So let me jump in here. So where is that coming from, Candace? We've been talking about this from Jump Street, right? In terms of quote unquote leadership in the black community. Where are these ideas coming from? Where are they coming from? Right?
What ideas? The
idea of economic empowerment, right? Because you were alluding to it, the fact that we have to develop this, but who's going to develop this?
Is it it's so crazy. And I'm just going to use a biblical kind of understanding. And Noah kept telling them, like, it's raining. It's going to rain. The rain is coming. He built this ark, and they're looking at him like he's crazy. But economic independence is so important for the simple fact that we are in a class war, whether you want to believe it or not. Absolutely. And it's going to be the haves versus the have-nots. And because you're so busy trying to be a one-person powerhouse, you don't realize you're about to end up in the have-nots with everybody else. Absolutely. You're so busy trying to get away from everyone that you don't recognize that alone you will not have enough to be a part of the haves.
Absolutely.
And so to get through these tough times that are coming, because keep in mind, they are coming.
Yes.
To get through these tough times that are coming, you want things in your community that you own. You want things in your community that is under your own power.
Absolutely. I agree.
You want things that cannot be easily taken or easily stripped from you. Because right now you have no economic voice. Little to none, I will say.
That's an excellent point here, right? Because now in the book Powernomics by Dr. Claude Anderson, in chapter 5 of that book, that chapter is entitled Practicing Group Economics. So now we're looking at the collective. Of course, we're individuals, but no man, no woman is an island. So now we're looking at the sustainability and the success of an entire community and how can we begin to foster that. So in chapter 5, he talks about practicing group economics. And I want to read just a 2-sentence statement from that chapter that I think is significant. He says that the black race enriched every group on earth. So that expands the conversation beyond America. But then he says, now it must enrich itself. Think about that. Just think about that. In the black community, we see people from every group, people who just got here yesterday, right? And one of the first places they go to set up a store or a business is where? The black community. This has been happening for quite some time. This has been happening for hundreds of years in America.
Been happening like that. Do you ever think that maybe there was some little behind the scenes conversation like, okay, now that you're here, you go here and get real estate there.
Absolutely.
Because again, when you look at gentrification and things of that nature, when
Sure.
they come in and they're talking and they're bragging about how they got this house for pennies on the dollar that they would have normally gotten for X amount, some higher amount somewhere else, I don't think they recognize the fact that they're talking about, or they do not care about the fact that they're talking about they're coming into someone's neighborhood. They're taking someone's grandmother's
Absolutely.
house.
Absolutely.
So I'm just wondering, are there ever like behind the scenes conversations that we never get to have of
Absolutely.
you come in this country but you set up real estate there?
Absolutely. That's happening in this region, right? That's happening in the city of Detroit, right? I remember when I was having a conversation with some people who live in Detroit, friends of mine, acquaintances, and so forth. And this one person was a real estate agent, and she was saying that she sees it. There are people who are coming to Detroit from overseas. They're coming from England, that they're coming from various countries in Europe to come over here and to buy land. In China, the same thing is happening. You have persons of Chinese extraction who are buying homes and buying real estate in the city of Detroit. It is prime time for people to buy real estate in the city of Detroit, because the city of Detroit is going to experience an economic rebirth. And really,
Obviously.
it's coming down to right now, the way it's playing itself out is that it's between the haves and the have-nots in the city of Detroit. And guess who's being pushed out? Black people in the city of Detroit are being pushed out. Those who don't have the economic wherewithal. And that's a sad thing. But also, in Claude Anderson's book, he makes the following statement. It's good not only for the black community that we become economically empowered, but it's also good for the nation. I want to read a quick quote here that he alluded to in his book. And he's quoting Alan Greenspan.
And you said this is Dr. Claude Anderson.
This is Dr. Claude Anderson. It's Powernomics.
Okay.
By Dr. Claude Anderson. And he's quoting the former chairman of the board of the Federal Reserve, Alan Greenspan. And Alan Greenspan makes the following statement. He said that Greenspan went beyond the reporting on the national economy and sounded an alarm to the nation that holds particular concern for black Americans. He said that despite white America's economic good times, wealth disparities between groups are widening. He said, I have no illusions that the task of breaking down barriers that produce disparities in income and wealth will be simple. But he warned that this task remains an important goal because societies cannot thrive if significant segments perceive their functioning as unjust. This was Alan Greenspan, the former chairman of the Board of Reserves, saying that there's a widening, you were just making reference to this, there's a widening gap between the haves and the have-nots in American society, and he said that it's dangerous to have significant segments of the American populace that perceive that they're being discriminated against and being left out of getting their cut of the economic pie in America. That's amazing. So we got to turn this thing around, not only for ourselves, but it's really for the betterment of this country as a whole as well.
You cannot prosper as a country. And I think we talked about this a couple of shows back.
Yes.
Of when we were talking about America and how it was built.
Yes.
And some of when we're talking about violence in America. And we were saying like the bloodshed. Eventually that blood cries out and has to be answered for.
Yes.
And so that's why we're looking at some violence now.
Absolutely.
That's the same thing with now as you look at economics.
Yes.
And people being basically it's toppling.
Yes.
And it's simple because we're trying to be top heavy. We're saying trickle down economics, which does not exist.
Yes.
It's very clear that it does not exist.
Yes.
And it's like you have to be careful thinking this thing is not going to touch you, or you can leave a segment of the population out and you'll be
Absolutely.
all right.
Absolutely. No doubt.
At this point, you have to understand that the color of your skin does not matter when it boils down to a corporation.
Yes.
It does not matter when it boils down to financial stability and those. And I mean that in the sense of the 1% does not care that you are white with them.
No.
Does not care that you're Hispanic with them. Does not care that you are whatever race they happen to be with them. They care about is money and the fact that you do not have it, and they're going to make sure you do not get it.
Yes.
And so when we look in terms of thinking we're going to continue to disenfranchise black people, you are tearing up your country.
Absolutely.
Being hateful.
Absolutely. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. That's a great point. That's a great point there, too. And I want to quickly move on to some points that Claude Anderson is making.
Green does not
in
know
his
a
book.
color. Let's
no doubt. Some people would say it's a spirit, right?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? You have to test the spirit by the spirit. You know, you know what I mean? But then we get into a theological discussion now. But Dr. Claude Anderson makes a couple of quick points here concerning how we can begin the process of empowering ourselves economically. He has this coined as economic action step number 1: create an alternative economy within Black communities. Right?
Right.
He says that Black America needs an alternative economy to address its business, employment, and wealth needs. Right? He says that our alternative economy should be a small but competitive business community that exists outside of but is complementary to the mainstream economy. Point number 1 that he makes. Point number 2, dominate business ownership and management where Black people are the majority consumer population. He says that since social democracies operate on the majority rules principle, learning to dominate businesses in areas anywhere a group is dominant in population should be one of the easiest principles for Black Americans to follow. Let's talk about that. What do you think about that?
So basically, you're saying like dominate like the hair industry,
Yeah.
the clothing industry.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Oh, now see, Candace. Here's my question. Maybe you're a woman. You get your hair done. You're a stylist. You got your hair flicking and whatnot, ladies and gentlemen. You got her hair on point. It's on fleek and whatnot.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
but here's the point, though. I always wonder, why don't Black hair care stylists band together and begin to work together? Because if they are able to crack through that wall, oh my goodness, you have the creation of millionaires.
I agree with that, and I'm going to tell you one of the things that I recognize that happens even within our very own community right here at home. Was there was a Black hair store that was open. It was trying to be open on more than one opportunity, if you will.
Hutchinson.
I didn't want to say that.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. All right.
And what you'll have is you'll have people who go, I'm not saying it is them, but what I am saying is you'll have people who go in there and say, well, their prices are too high, they're to this, they're to that. And it's like, if you continue to frequent that store and you tell everyone else that you know to go to this store, then they would be able to have the prices at something more that you could afford. Whereas if you keep going down the street, at some point you've got to spend money to make money.
Absolutely.
But at some point you have to pull your dollars from those little side ventures and go all in for this thing in the community.
Absolutely.
You just have to.
No doubt about it.
It's like if we're all shopping there, eventually it will have to be reasonable for us all. Eventually they will be able to afford to be reasonable for us all. But you can't keep expecting people to have these businesses and have it at something you can afford when only 3-4 other people are shopping there. They
No
got
doubt.
to figure out how to make money as well. In the same way that you're willing to keep some of these other side stores open and in business, you need to be willing to keep them in business as well.
That's
I
true.
can't impress upon enough the fact that the economic tide is turning. And I wanted to be able to talk about this tax bill tonight, but we cannot because there's just so much that goes into it
No doubt.
that it just would have been irresponsible to only give that tax bill about 10, 15 minutes of a show. But you need to know that tax bill is going to hit, and it is going to hit hard. You might think next year, oh, I'm benefiting from this. I can get double my money for claiming my child and all this other stuff. Like they are putting all of this up front. But what you need to know is basically like a loan of, let me give you all this money now, because in about 8 to 10 years from now, I'm snatching it all back.
Oh, my goodness.
I want every penny back. You're going to pay twice as much as you're paying now.
Yes.
And so, but I'm saying when we look at when this thing hits, because this tax bill is going to hit hard when it hits.
Yes.
Are we going to be in a position to where we can, at the very least, sustain ourselves?
That's
Will
real.
we be
That's
in a
real.
position
That's
to
real.
keep our homes? Will we be in a position to even go to these corner stores?
That's real. That's real.
Like, we need to position ourselves now because this tax bill is going to tear up communities. It just is.
We're going to have to continue on with this conversation at some point.
We do have like 3 minutes.
But I got to say this, though, Candace, because some people, some economists and other forecasters are maintaining that the economic perils are forthcoming.
Oh, it's going. It is going to.
There will be a depression.
Hard.
There will be a depression, possibly a worldwide depression.
I think, Colin, we've got to come up with another word because saying depression is going to be far too kind.
A tsunami, an economic tsunami that is going to explode.
Right. If we could even get into
globally.
If we could even get into the flawed thought process of trickle-down economics.
Oh, my goodness.
We do not have the time. And again, because we are going to discuss this tax
Yes,
bill
absolutely.
and what it means, because the conversation has to be had. But just know, any benefit that you see up front, if you are not a corporation, you will not continue to see in the long run. All of the tax breaks that these corporations are getting, it is for
Yes.
them to be permanent.
Yes.
What you are
Yes.
getting as
5
an
years.
individual.
5 years, I believe, right?
Yes. So what you're getting as an individual, this is just upfront. They are literally like, we're going to give you a loan on a loan and take our money back.
There you go. No doubt.
This
No
tax
doubt.
bill is
Yes.
not beneficial for everyday Joe. It's just not.
No question about that.
We're
Absolutely.
going to pay for this later. Then, if you pay attention, they've changed tax brackets. It doesn't start at
Yes.
10%; it starts at 12% now, and it's just so much. And I wish we would have had the opportunity. So it's by no mistake that we are talking about economic independence on
Absolutely.
tonight,
Absolutely.
and how important it is that we work together and move in unity, and,
Yes.
and have the willingness to support one another.
Absolutely.
Because when it hits the fan,
It's going to hit.
it's over. So again,
Yes.
we'll get into the
Yes,
tax
no
bill.
doubt. Absolutely.
We will get into
Absolutely.
the tax bill, but it was just one of those things where it was just so much to digest.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Even in knowing and understanding what it's saying, still so much, because there's little intricate parts that you have to go back and explain why this affects this. And not only that, but they pulled the move that they often pull
Yes.
of putting other things in bills, and so they've done some things that's going to affect the environment, and we
Yes.
definitely need to have a conversation about the environment one day.
Absolutely.
And why black people need to
Absolutely.
pay attention to green things.
Absolutely.
We
No doubt.
would definitely have to have that conversation one day. And then also, they found a way to hit one of the measures in the Affordable Care Act.
Wow.
They found a way to take away health care being mandatory. So what happens
Oh.
now is that people who do not absolutely have to have it, they're going to drop health care, because keep in mind,
Yes, yes.
it's an expensive thing to have.
Absolutely.
And so they're going to drop it because that's an expense they no longer have to have. And what's going to happen to the premium for everyone else that keeps it is
Going
it's
up.
going to go up.
Absolutely.
But again, we have like
Absolutely.
1 minute left. We cannot go into this. That's why I didn't want to mention the tax bill, because I knew I was
No
going to be
doubt,
like,
no doubt,
listen,
no
listen,
doubt, no
listen.
doubt.
But yeah, so in our last minute, we just want to thank you for tuning into Whose Opinion Is It Anyway with Candace.
Absolutely. And Victor.
Right here on WFOV 92.1 FM. Thank you for tuning in on Facebook. Thank you for tuning in on YouTube. Make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe to the Spectacle TV YouTube channel. We are out of time, so we will be back
Yes.
next week. Once again, thank you for tuning in.
A Luther Continua.
Great job as usual, you guys.
All
I'm
right,
really
all right.
learning from y'all show. That's why I'm trying to encourage people to listen.
Appreciate.
We're still live
Oh,
here.
okay. Appreciate that.